Hurricane Maria continues strengthening, hits 175 miles per hour. Breaking daily news. Miami, the latest on powerful Hurricane Maria, all times local. 7 p.m. Category 5 Hurricane Maria's maximum sustained winds have increased to 175 miles per hour, 280 kph. The National Hurricane Center in Miami says an Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunter plane took the reading Tuesday evening as the storm was about 70 miles, 115 kilometers, southeast of St. Croix. Maria is moving west-northwest at 10 miles per hour, 17 kph, and is expected to pass near the U.S. Virgin Islands on Tuesday night and hit Puerto Rico on Wednesday, 5 p.m. An even stronger Hurricane Maria is moving steadily toward the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and is likely to still be a powerful Category 5 storm when it arrives. The National Hurricane Center in Miami reported that Maria's winds had intensified to 160 miles per hour, 265 kph, late Tuesday afternoon, and that some additional strengthening was possible Tuesday evening. At 5 p.m. Tuesday, Maria was centered about 175 miles, 280 kilometers, southeast of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and was moving west-northwest at 10 miles per hour, 16 kph. A hurricane warning was in effect for Puerto Rico and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, as well as St. Kitts, Nevis, and Montserrat and portions of the Dominican Republic. Hurricane Center forecasters say it now appears likely that Maria will still be at Category 5 intensity when it moves over the U.S., Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. The center of the hurricane was forecast to move near or over the U.S., Virgin Island of St. Croix and Puerto Rico on Tuesday night and Wednesday, bringing with it life-threatening flooding from rain and storm surge. 4:30 p.m. France's Interior Minister has made an initial damage assessment after Hurricane Maria passed over 2 French Caribbean islands and says at least 150,000 homes are without electricity. Interior Minister Gerard Collomb said in Paris on Tuesday that the hurricane left 80,000 households in Guadeloupe and 70,000 in Martinique without power. Collomb warned that Maria still was passing through St. Martin and St. Bart's Islands, French territories that suffered extreme damage from Hurricane Irma. The extent of the damage from Tuesday's hurricane is yet to be assessed on those islands and in Guadeloupe. Collomb says Martinique's airport is still operating. The Guadeloupe prefecture said earlier that 1 person died and 2 others were missing there. Collomb said there were 3 people wounded in Martinique, including 1 seriously. 3:50 p.m. Potentially catastrophic Category 5 Hurricane Maria is lashing the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico with rain. The National Hurricane Center in Miami says the powerful storm was located about 195 miles, 315 kilometers, southeast of San Juan, Puerto Rico. At 3 p.m. Monday, it had maximum sustained winds of 165 miles per hour, 265 kmh, and was moving 10 miles per hour, 17 kmh. The center said the hurricane was expected to remain an extremely dangerous Category 4 or 5 hurricane when it passes near or over the Virgin Islands overnight, and Puerto Rico on Wednesday. 3:30 p.m. An official from the Caribbean island of Dominica says officials have been told that extremely powerful Hurricane Maria tore the roofs off 70% of the island's homes and that there have been unconfirmed reports of deaths. Consul General Barbara Daly told the Associated Press in a phone interview from New York that officials have not been able to reach anyone on the island since 4 a.m. Tuesday and that they are extremely concerned. Maria swept over the island overnight as a Category 5 storm, the highest on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. Daly noted that her house on the island lost its roof, as did the official residence of the Prime Minister, Roosevelt Scarlett. She says Dominica will be in desperate need of aid and emergency supplies in the coming days. 1 p. a.m. Officials say one person has died on the French Caribbean island of Guadeloupe after being hit by a falling tree. It's the first death attributed to Category 5 Hurricane Maria. Authorities say the person did not comply with orders to remain indoors on Tuesday morning. They say 2 other people are reported missing after their boat sank off La Desirate Island, just east of Guadeloupe. About 40% of the island is without power. That's 80,000 homes. Flooding has been reported in several communities, especially along the southern coast. Officials say Les Saints, Marie-Gallant, Petit Bourgon and La Desirade have been the hardest hit. Roads are littered with fallen branches and trees, but only limited infrastructure damage has been reported. 12:30 p.m. A company that tracks the status of the internet around the world says most of Dominica's internet service appears to be down in the wake of Hurricane Maria. Akamai Technologies says it sees small spikes of activity, but far less than normal on Tuesday. The company says it's possible that the island's electrical system is down. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt was posting on Facebook after the Category 5 storm hit overnight, but his post ceased hours ago and many report difficulties reaching people on the island by telephone. 11:55 a.m. Florida Gov. Rick Scott says his state's citizens should carefully monitor Hurricane Maria. The Category 5 storm is forecast to veer out into the Atlantic and miss the state, but Scott reminded people on Tuesday that Hurricane Irma's path shifted as it approached the U.S., and it wound up causing devastation. Scott encouraged people to restock their hurricane kits, buy water and have an evacuation plan. He said that about 2% of the state's electric customers are still without power due to Irma. His comments came as he thanked first responders during an event in Tampa. 11:15 a.m. U.S. Virgin Islands Gov. Kenneth Mapp says that the track of Hurricane Maria has shifted and the eye is now expected to pass over the southwestern tip of St. Croix. That means parts of the island are expected to experience the full force of the storm winds that have now reached 160 miles per hour. 260 kph. Conditions are expected to deteriorate tonight with the approach of the extremely dangerous hurricane. The Virgin Islands are already reeling from Hurricane Irma, which passed over the islands of St. Thomas and St. John. Mapp warned Tuesday that Maria is expected to bring up to 12 inches of rain to St. John. 11 a.m. Forecasters say potentially catastrophic Hurricane Maria is continuing on its course toward the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said as 11 a.m. that the extremely dangerous Category 5 storm is forecast to hit the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico on Wednesday. The top sustained winds of the storm are near 160 miles per hour, 260 kph, and the Miami-based center says some fluctuations in intensity are likely over the coming days. The eye of Maria was about 85 miles, 135 kilometers, west of Guadeloupe or about 170 miles, 275 kilometers, southeast of St. Croix. It was moving to the west-northwest at 10 miles per hour, 16 kph. Meanwhile, Jose remained a Category 1 hurricane in the Atlantic as it whipped up dangerous surf and rip currents along the U.S. East Coast. It was about 335 miles, 539 kilometers, south-southwest of Nantucket, Massachusetts, and had top sustained winds of 75 miles per hour, 120 kph. 11 a.m. Family and friends of people studying at Croix University School of Medicine in Dominica are anxiously trying to find news of their loved ones following the passage of Hurricane Maria. The school says there is widespread loss of communication on the island. Many messages posted on Facebook by friends and family say they have been unable to talk to students since late Monday evening as the storm approached. One woman says her husband spoke to their daughter at 6 p.m. as the storm was in full force. She wrote that her daughter was very scared but safe with friends, but she has not heard from her since. 10:30 a.m. Coastal flooding from Hurricane Jose has prompted North Carolina to close parts of the main highway on the Outer Banks. The state transportation department says that parts of N.C. Highway 12 were closed by flooding Tuesday morning. The agency says the road north of the P Island Visitors Center was temporarily closed until the tide subsides. The ocean was washing over areas south of the Bonner Bridge to Cape Hatteras. The department also said Monday that ocean overwash was occurring at P Island, Rodan, Avon and Hatteras Village on Hatteras Island. A coastal flood warning was issued for Dare County on the Outer Banks through Tuesday night. Rip current warnings were posted from north of Wilmington to the Virginia state line. _9:10 a.m. About 25,000 households lost electricity and 2 small towns are without potable water after Hurricane Maria roared past the French island of Martinique. Damage considered minimal. The head of French civil security, Jacques Vitkowski, told reporters in Paris on Tuesday that it was too soon to say whether the French Department of Guadeloupe was so lucky. Communications there have been difficult. He says 2 people suffered minor injuries. The prefect, or highest French official, of Guadeloupe, Eric Mayer, said in a video via Twitter that some roads and homes were flooded and heavy rain is expected to continue. He told island residents to remain inside amid the flood threat and warnings by forecasters of possible landslides. France is upping its manpower in the region, with 2 flights taking off on Tuesday, the first carrying 160 firefighters and military personnel to Martinique. _8:35 a.m. New York state officials have deployed members of the National Guard and specialized emergency response units to Long Island to prepare for potentially severe weather caused by Hurricane Jose. Gov. Andrew Cuomo says 100 members of the National Guard, 13 members of an urban search and rescue team, and 20 high-axle vehicles will set up a command post at a welcome center on the Long Island Expressway in Dix Hills in Suffolk County. That coastal county is under a tropical storm watch. The Democratic governor says the facility will be open to members of the public seeking shelter during severe weather. Cuomo organized a storm briefing at the welcome center Tuesday morning. Hurricane Jose, though still far out in the Atlantic, is producing rough surf along the east coast. _8 a.m. Forecasters say potentially catastrophic Hurricane Maria is heading toward the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said as 8 a.m. that the extremely dangerous Category 5 storm is on a forecast track approaching the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico between Tuesday night and Wednesday. The top sustained winds of the storm are near 160 miles per hour, 260 kph. And the Miami-based center says some fluctuations in intensity are likely over the coming days. At 8 a.m., the eye of Maria was about 85 miles, 135 kilometers, west of Guadeloupe or about 170 miles, 275 kilometers, southeast of St. Croix. The major hurricane is moving to the west-northwest at 9 miles per hour, 15 kph. Meanwhile, Jose remained a Category 1 hurricane in the Atlantic as it churned up dangerous surf and rip currents along the U.S. East Coast. It was about 350 miles, 560 kilometers south-southwest of Nantucket, Massachusetts, and had top sustained winds of 75 miles per hour, 120 kph. _7 a.m. The surf remains rough along the New Jersey shore and there's a chance for some coastal flooding because of Jose, but the strong winds associated with the hurricane are well off the coast. A high surf advisory remains in effect until 6 p.m. Tuesday and a coastal flood warning is posted until 1 a.m. Wednesday. Wave heights off the coast could build to 15 feet. 4.5 meters, while breaking waves along the coast are expected to reach 8 to 10 feet, 2 to 3 meters. A high risk for rip currents continues. Minor flooding is expected during the morning high tide and moderate flooding is anticipated during the evening. Widespread roadway flooding is expected and minor property damage is possible. _6:15 a.m. Dominica Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt says there are initial reports of widespread devastation in the small island from Hurricane Maria. The Prime Minister says he will be going around the country to see what has happened and what is needed as soon as the all-clear sign is given, but that his greatest fear is that the people of Dominica will wake to news of serious physical injury and possible deaths. He made the statement in a post on his Facebook page while the storm was still raging. At one point, He lost the roof to his own official residence. He also said that the winds have swept away the roofs of many other people. He says his initial focus will be to rescue trapped people and secure medical aid for the injured. 5:10 a.m. Hurricane Maria has regained Category 5 strength, upping its top wind speeds after it had briefly dropped to a Category 4 storm overnight near the island of Dominica. The U.S. National Hurricane Center in Miami says a hurricane hunter plane checking on Maria after it pounded that small Caribbean island says the storm strengthened anew early Tuesday and again has top sustained winds of 160 miles per hour. 260 kph. The storm was located early Tuesday about 65 miles, 100 kilometers, west-southwest of another Caribbean island, Guadeloupe. It's moving to the west-northwest at 9 miles per hour, 15 kph. Forecasters say a Category 5 hurricane is a major and extremely dangerous storm capable of catastrophic winds. They add that fluctuations in intensity were expected and that further strengthening is possible as the storm moves over warm Caribbean waters in coming hours and days. Elsewhere, in the Atlantic, Hurricane Jose is producing dangerous surf and rip currents along the east coast of the United States. Forecasters say that storm is centered about 240 miles, 390 kilometers, east-northeast of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, or about 365 miles, 590 kilometers, south of Nantucket, Massachusetts. It's moving to the north at 9 miles per hour, 15 kph, with top sustained winds of 75 miles per hour, 120 kph. 2:45 a.m. Hurricane Maria, after pounding Dominica with high winds, has weakened slightly to a still extremely dangerous Category 4 major storm. The U.S. National Hurricane Center in Miami said early Tuesday that top sustained winds had fallen slightly to 155 miles per hour. 250 kph. It says high winds are now beginning to diminish over Dominica and that the height of Maria is now about 45 miles, 70 kilometers, west-northwest of that small Caribbean island. The storm is
Hurricane Maria does damage to Dominica. NOAA latest path update. The potentially catastrophic Category 5 Hurricane Irma has winds of 160 miles per hour, 260 kilometers per hour, and will remain incredibly dangerous hurricane until it reaches the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. The 11 a.m. EDT, 4 p.m. BST, update from NOAA's NHC, placed the eye of the storm 115 miles, 180 kilometers, west of Guadeloupe and 150 miles, 240 kilometers, southeast of Croix. The NHC said, Maria is moving toward the west-northwest near 10 miles per hour, 17 kilometers per hour, and this general motion is expected to continue through Wednesday night. On the forecast track, the eye of Maria will move over the northeastern Caribbean Sea today, and then pass near or over the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico on Wednesday. It added, the core of the hurricane is expected to move near or over Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands tonight and Wednesday. Everyone in these areas should follow advice from local officials to avoid life-threatening flooding from storm surge and rainfall. Maria has fierce winds extending up to 140 miles, 220 kilometers, out of the storm center. NOAA's forecasting service warned, hurricane force winds extend outward up to 35 miles, 55 kilometers, from the center, and tropical storm force winds extend outward up to 140 miles, 220 kilometers. On the forecast track, the eye of Maria is expected to stay on course despite some wobbling. A weak ridge located over the western Atlantic will steer the storm west-northwestward over the next 48 hours, near or over the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico on Wednesday. Thereafter Maria could turn northwestward and then north-northwestward in about 4 to 5 days. Once the weather front crossed Puerto Rico, the NHC expects upper-level winds to become less favorable, with a slow weakening. Residents of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico are strongly advised to heed all warnings from official authorities. On top of its devastating winds, Maria is expected to produce as much as 25 inches of rain in isolated areas. Here is the latest full list of watches and warnings issued over Maria. A hurricane warning is in effect for Guadeloupe, Dominica, St. Kitts, Nevis, and Montserrat, U.S. Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Vix. A tropical storm warning is in effect for Antigua and Barbuda, Saban St. Eustatius, St. Martin, Anguilla, Martinique. A hurricane watch is in effect for Saban St. Eustatius, St. Martin, and St. Bartholomew, Anguilla. Isla Sonita, Puerto Plata, Mexico City. The Caribbean island nation of Dominica sustained mind-boggling damage from Hurricane Maria, its prime minister said Tuesday, after the storm hit with maximum sustained winds of nearly 160 miles per hour that tripped roofs off buildings, including his own home. There was no immediate word of deaths or injuries on the island from the storm, the third in a string of devastating hurricanes to sweep through the region in recent weeks. The National Hurricane Center said Tuesday morning that Maria, now moving away from Dominica, had regained Category 5 strength, after briefly dropping to Category 4. The potentially catastrophic storm is expected to approach the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico on Wednesday, the center said. Roosevelt Scarrett, Dominica's prime minister, wrote on Facebook on Tuesday that the island, where 72,000 people live, had experienced widespread devastation, based on initial reports. So far we have lost all what money can buy and replace, he said. My greatest fear for the morning is that we will wake to news of serious physical injury and possible deaths as a result of likely landslides triggered by persistent rains. Mr. Scarrett said that the winds have swept away the roofs of almost every person I have spoken to or otherwise made contact with. On Monday night, he said, he had to be rescued after the storm tore the roof off his official residence. He said the island's immediate priority was to rescue people who were trapped and provide medical care to the injured. I am honestly not preoccupied with physical damage at this time, because it is devastating. Indeed, mind-boggling, Mr. Scarrett said. He said that he expected the island's airports and seaports to be inoperable for a few days, and he asked friendly nations and organizations to provide a helicopter so that he could survey the damage. We will need help, my friend. We will need help of all kinds, he said. By early Tuesday morning, phone and internet signals on Dominica appeared to be down, leaving the island virtually incommunicado. Early reports suggested that the neighboring islands of Guadeloupe and Martinique had not been as badly hit as Dominica, though the authorities there had not yet provided a comprehensive assessment of the damage. Officials in Guadeloupe, to the north of Dominica, said early assessments indicated that in certain areas, including Les Saints and southern Basse-Terre Island, the hurricane caused serious flooding and widespread damage to buildings. Roofs were torn off by the wind, and about 80,000 homes lost power. Guadeloupe has been a staging ground for the regional aid response to Hurricane Irma, which battered the Caribbean 2 weeks ago. It has also been a refuge for people from St. Martin, an island hit hard by Hurricane Irma, so the arrival of Maria could compound the difficulties involved in recovering from the disasters. The territory's prefect urged civilians to remain in their homes and shelters to allow emergency crews to clear the streets of fallen power cables and debris, and said the military would be deployed to help the police maintain order. The French island of Martinique, to the south of Dominica, suffered limited damage, French government officials said. 2 people reported minor injuries. 2 localities lost water service and between 25,000 and 33,000 households lost power. Jacques Vakovsky, France's head of civil security, said he had ordered local officials on Martinique to make a reconnaissance over Dominica to survey the damage. If the government there requires help, the French authorities will send rescue teams to the island, he said at a news conference in Paris on Tuesday morning. Around 250 military personnel and firefighters are scheduled to leave from France's mainland to its overseas territories on Thursday, complementing a force of 4,600 military personnel and search and rescue teams already on the French islands of Martinique. Guadeloupe and Guyana. Mr. Vikovsky said, as the hurricane blew west-northwest through the Caribbean on Tuesday morning. Residents in the British Virgin Islands raced to prepare for its arrival. The debris left behind by Hurricane Irma is still piled high on the sides of roads and homes remain damaged, but crews operating heavy machinery were trying to clear as much of the wreckage as possible Tuesday morning while marina workers secured boats. "We are all stressed trying to finish what needs to be done before we have to hunker down," said Christine Perakis, who rents an apartment in Tortilla where she weathered Hurricane Irma. "What makes us hopeful is that we took Irma head-on and this one is about 60 miles away." For Hurricane Maria, Ms. Perakis is staying with friends who live in the island's marina and have opened their home to outsiders. For now, there is food and water as they count down to another hurricane. "Holed up inside the house, I don't know what they did to get 2 hurricanes in a row," she said. "I'll gladly do some rain dances to stop this." Catastrophic Category 5 Hurricane Maria slammed into Dominica last night, and is now headed towards the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. There will be plenty of swell from this storm, including for some unusual and tropical places, but surfing is the last thing on the minds of those in the path of Maria. "To be honest, we just want this damn storm to go away." As of 11 a.m. EDT, Hurricane Maria is about 150 miles south of St. Croix with 140 kilotons winds, moving W&W at 9 kilotons. Hurricane warnings are in effect for Puerto Rico, Cuba, Vieques, British and U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Kitts, Nevis, Montserrat, Dominica, and Guadeloupe. Additional hurricane watches and tropical storm watches warnings are in effect for other surrounding areas. Please monitor statements from the National Hurricane Center and local authorities for additional info regarding the protection of life and property. Maria is forecast to move W&W towards the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico as a catastrophic major hurricane. Preparations against life-threatening storm surge, rainfall flooding, and destructive winds should be rushed to completion in those areas per the NHC. Buoy 42,060 in the Northeast Caribbean is very close to the current location of Maria. The buoy has reported wind gusts of 82 kds and 31 feet seas at 13 intervals over the last couple of hours. We expect large swell to spread W&W with Maria over the next couple of days. Check out the latest Lola animation of wave heights associated with the storm as it moves through Puerto Rico and the surrounding area. Later this week and this weekend, Maria is expected to start moving to the northwest just east of the Bahamas. This has potential to set up another significant swell event for the majority of the East Coast and Canadian Maritimes. Here are a few additional good and bad things associated with the storm. And note we are starting with the negatives first this time since it's tough to find much good with this beast. Bad things about Maria. Catastrophic damage for parts of the Caribbean are likely again, including Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. The storm is too close to many Caribbean islands to produce favorable surfing conditions. Track over or south of the islands will limit East Coast swell production initially. And the positives? Not much good about a storm about to impact widespread areas in the Caribbean. Potential for good swell for select islands out of Maria's path. Also potential for good swell for portions of the Caribbean side of Central America. Increasing odds of prolonged, potentially significant, swell from Maria, Jose or a combination of both later this week for the East Coast. Over the weekend and possibly into the following week, Surfline offers many forecasting tools for you to utilize, but our written forecasts by our team of East Coast forecasters is our most valuable and useful tool. We pore over all the model runs and incorporate real-time observations and data to fine-tune our forecasts, delivered via the simple colored boxes and discussions.